How's
Okay, there we go. I did it.
how's your baby?
She's so good. She's the cutest little thing in the world.
Oh my gosh, I hope you go on a date night soon so I can babysit.
Yeah.
But no pressure, you
I
don't.
personally, I know, and it's so hard because she's breastfed and like
I mean, she's still.
I need to get there to that point. Like daycare was a big step for us.
Yeah. Did your
And
parents move up?
not yet, but they're probably going to. My dog is rolling
Yeah,
around
he's
right now.
really in a good mood today.
Yeah, he's always in a good mood when I'm home and the baby's not here. So
So do you have Fridays off first?
I work from home on Fridays. I needed like one day to have
Yeah,
wash clothes, I
I know.
don't have time
Yeah.
to do that anymore. So
So how old is she now?
she's 4 months. She'll be 5 months in a week.
Okay, yeah, that's still super.
She's itty bitty.
Yeah, I don't know if they can like hold their neck up at that point.
Yeah, she has good head control, but she's not rolling or anything. So
Yeah,
that's the next thing.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's too soon for me.
I
But
know.
once she's ready, I'll be there.
Yes, of course. And I really appreciate it because I was like, we've thought about who would we use for a babysitter? And I know people with like high school students, and I'm like, I don't know if I want a 16-year-old watching my baby.
Well, I'm gonna introduce you first. Okay, this is Jessica Roux. We met at the Boys and Girls Club in Fayetteville. No, in Bentonville.
Bentonville.
Yeah, in Bentonville. And you were the grant writer there. And I was the intern, and that's like the first time I had ever heard of grant writing. Honestly, I didn't know anything about it. I'd heard my like mom talk about it, like how it's important and stuff, because I think my grandmother used to like write some grants, but not to like the extent of like having a job
Mhm.
as, solely as a grant writer. But I
Yeah.
think you're like the reason I got hired because like you applied for me.
Yes, I did.
So I'm just gonna ask you about your experience and you can give some tips um, and things like that because this is for a grant writing class.
Okay.
I'm my master's in social work. So
Yeah, awesome.
I think grant writing is like super important because like I feel like that gives you a leg up like in any field,
Mhm.
in any nonprofit area, especially.
Yeah, definitely.
So the first question is, what kind of grants have you written?
So the first grant I ever wrote was a federal grant when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine. It was for USAID, and that grant was to kind of establish an English Technology Resource Center in the school that I was working at. And so there were a lot of layers that went into it because it was a federal grant. The whole process took almost a year and a half to from researching to kind of writing it to getting the funds and actually buying the equipment and getting everything set up. So that was my first ever grant, and it was just a lot of stuff that went into it.
Did you while you were in the Ukraine?
Yes. Yeah. I wrote it like 4 months after I'd gotten there because I knew I wanted to write a grant while I was there. And I'm glad it worked out because federal grants are, it's a whole different level than just writing private grants for, a nonprofit.
Okay. So where do you find your grants?
So at Boys and Girls Club, it was kind of two parts. So one was we already had relationships with foundations and other businesses and corporations that had grants that they were distributing. So I already knew about these grants, and I kind of just kept a calendar of when, the grant cycle was going to begin. And so I knew when to apply. Otherwise, I did a lot of research through, I don't even remember the website right now. This is terrible. But there's a website where I would just type in, youth development, the location, and just do those filters. And it would give you a list of things that you could apply for. And not all of them, were a good fit for us because some of them, if it's a little bit of money and a lot of work, I didn't really feel like that would be worth our time, especially if there were going to be lots of people applying. And then And then there was also just like kind of research, because then, Northwest Arkansas is a very philanthropic community. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of, I had like a network of fundraisers, and we met monthly. And so people would share information, just within.
Yeah. That just doesn't sound too bad. If you think of the website, let me know.
I will. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, how do you go about writing a grant?
Great question. So each grant is completely different. What I did at Boys and Girls Club is, because I think every grant always has a purpose statement where you're going to just have to give a little bit of what you want to do, kind of your priorities as an organization, and then also just like background of the organization. And I always had something like pre-written about that just gave, what our strategic goals were, what we were working towards, the history of the organization. Yeah. So that's kind of made that part a little bit easier. And then after that, a lot of it is like collaborative, because I was not like, it wasn't my job to decide the needs of Boys and Girls Club. That was on a higher up level. So working with, Matt, the CEO, working with the other resource, like Stephanie, resource development director, the program directors, seeing what their needs are and seeing how we can connect them to the grant. And then really there's a lot, you have to do kind of research on the organization you're applying for, because some organizations want the very like a fluffy grant with just a lot of like compelling statements, stories about the people you're impacting.
Okay.
Others just want, matter of fact, just like, this is what we want, this is when we want it, this is how we're gonna, do everything that we say we're gonna do.
Is
So
that
it's just
typically
kind of
like,
knowing what they want. Do what?
typically like laid out, or you just have to figure that out?
Really, it's just kind of like a little bit of research. And I think for me, I could always get a feel from just looking at their website, looking at their Facebook, like what are they looking for? Or just talking to other people and kind of figuring out what kind of grant I should be writing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what has been your most memorable grant?
Honestly, the first one I ever wrote. So when in Ukraine, I mean, that was big for a lot of reasons. Like first, it was in a whole other country.
Yeah.
Second, it was the first grant I'd ever written. And so I took a grant writing class my senior year in college. And so I knew that that was something I wanted to do going into the Peace Corps. So the fact that I got to do it, I was awarded the grant, and that it ended up being, a really good project for the community that I was working in. And that was the way I got to meet pretty much a lot of the people in my community, was by working on that grant.
Wow.
And so I got to improve my language skills. I mean, it was just.
Yeah, it was like all around
Yeah.
thing. Okay, what have been your hardest lessons in grant writing?
I think the thing that was hard for me, especially with Boys and Girls Club, is, you get kind of pressure from people above you to, we need money, apply for grants. And trying to let them know that either this is not a strategic fit, like this is not something that we really align with. So why are we going to be, wasting our energy? Or the other thing is when, I don't know how to word this, but when you see a need, or that there's a need within an organization that you're hearing from program staff, and that's what you think the grant should be, but then your higher ups are telling you, something else.
Yeah.
So that was always hard for me, is writing a grant that I didn't think that it was something that was the most important need. I don't know how to put that. And then also dotting your I's, crossing your T's. I mean, it is just, you have to pay a lot of attention to detail when you're grant writing, because it's not just I mean, it ends up being a legal document. Like once you sign, an agreement, that's a legal document, and you have things that you have to do. Reporting, sending in financials, and it's just making sure that, you are on time with all of that. Because
Yeah.
if you're late just once, I mean, now that I'm on the other side of it, I see, it's important to be on time and to be accurate with everything you do.
Okay, that's good information.
Yeah.
Okay, what advice would you give for a new grant writer?
First, to take a class, because it's not just as easy as, writing a paper in school. Not that that's easy, but and the next is you just have to do it. Like
Yeah,
that's kind of the hard part, is in doing your research. I think that's really important, is doing research before you get into actually writing. And that'll just help you through your process,
yeah,
like researching who you're writing the grant to, knowing the subject matter that you're writing about, and then adding in facts and figures whenever you can, because
yeah,
that really kind of elevates the grant.
yeah. I feel like that makes sense. Like when you're applying for a job, like you should do your research. When in
Ye-
doubt,
Yes.
do your research.
Mhm.
But going back to what you were saying about the hardest lessons, I feel like when I was working at the community clinic, they talked a lot about like the politics of like who they were getting their money from and like what stipulations they had, but maybe didn't align. So I feel like
Yep. Yep. 100%.
a constant battle there because like the funders might not necessarily agree with like certain aspects. It was
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. I see that even more now. So
well, thank you so much for doing this. Do you mind
yeah.
this?
Yeah, I got to figure out where this is recording to. I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, but it is recording, so we're gonna find it. And if I have to ask our IT people, I will help to do that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
no problem. Bye.